Hello, I'm Sabrina Lamb, the founder and the executive director of the World of Money, the leading provider of immersive financial education for ages 7 to 21. Also powered by the YWCA of Metropolitan Chicago. Welcome to Money Talk. Here at Money Talk, we, meaning you and I, will have an interactive conversation with leading thought leaders regarding money, wealth, business, service, and so much more. Today, you and I will hear from and engage with a proud native of Flint, Michigan. As a serial entrepreneur, he started his first business at the age of 8. 30 years later, he created and developed more than 10 businesses, the majority of which have been catalysts for social impact. And as an avid angel investor, he is focused on fast growing, disruptive companies with a social impact component. He is intentional about mentoring and investing in founders from communities that lack access to capital. Let's welcome to the World of Money, Money Talk stage, a World of Money virtual teacher and the CEO of Quartz Water Source and the best-selling author of Making Money While Making Change. Welcome, welcome, Mr. Jonathan J.Q. Quarrels. I'm exhausted with your bio.
Sabrina, Sabrina, I must say this before we get started. That introduction was amazing. I like how you started off with Flint, but I would say that was probably the second best introduction I've had. In all due respect, I was somewhere speaking last week, and the person that was supposed to introduce me didn't show up, so I had to introduce myself. So with all due respect, I would say that's probably the second best introduction, but thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Listen, I've had to introduce myself too, particularly if the crowd wasn't with it. So I had to go anyway. That's another life. But anyway, so welcome. Now, I'm fascinating with the title of your book and your work, and to leave our audience with action steps. So we're going to have a conversation, and the book titled "Making Dollars While Making Change," Jonathan. Now, what you talking about? How can you make change unless it's change in my pocket while making dollars? So why did you sit down and devote 3 months to this book? It takes a lot of energy to do so. Tell us about the process. Tell us why you were urgently committed to doing so.
Yeah, so the book was a culmination of my life experiences. I grew up in Flint, Michigan. One time for Flint, where my father told me you can be whatever you wanted to be, and my father knew at a very young age that I was the type of person that I was going to actually chart my own path through entrepreneurship and business ownership. So I started my first business when I was 8 years old, and I'm about to turn 40 this year, the big 40, and I've been in business now, I guess 38 years or 30 years, get my math right. And so, it was the book essentially was something that I've always wanted to write. I never thought I had the skills. I was never like the best writer growing up and things like that. But I knew I had real life experiences that translated and that created impact. And my father always taught me that, and I'm going to say this a lot today because my father is my hero. So a lot of people quote, Socrates and all these other wonderful philosophers and things like that. But I quote my father because my dad taught me that, the only way we grew up in poverty, the only way that we can get out of poverty is through actual self-determination, self-employment, and being able to employ the neighborhood, the hood is what we called it. And so, I just knew that I wanted to actually do something. And the only way that I can do it is actually to find ways to create streams of revenue at a very young age. And it's just been something that I've been doing for let's say 30 plus years.
Now, Jonathan, poverty, that word is used a lot. But from reading your book, I didn't feel any poverty there.
Yeah.
What is poverty?
Yeah. So, I'm glad you said that because I think for me, I knew that we were wealthy, although not financially wealthy. We were wealthy in love. I knew without a shadow of a doubt. And to this day, I still know that I grew up in a community, and that's why I love Flint so much, is that I had family members, friends. So the things that my parents couldn't do or provide, whether that was monetarily or the resources, I had a community. We never went without eating. Not one day did I have where we actually could not eat because we had grandmamas, we had aunties that wasn't related. that it was a community. And Flint is, anybody who you talk to from Flint, is all about community. We don't have fancy buildings and businesses. We have a community of people that love each other, and we got pride for our community. But I was very wealthy. Me and my brothers, we were very wealthy in love. And we grew up with this idea and this concept of God. If you put God first, you never come in second. So,
So you started off as having your own paper route. Not so sure if, well, actually, you started with working in a funeral parlor. That was something that you were so excited about doing. No. So do you think those entrepreneurial experiences planted the seed for your lifetime entrepreneurship, or was it more in your own DNA?
So I'll say it like this. So my first ever company was actually a paper route. And so that's when we had paper boys. And I know if you're a certain age listening to this, most people are like, what is a paper boy?
What's a paper?
Right. And so for those that don't know, paper boys actually delivered newspapers to homes. Like physical newspapers. My dad always had entrepreneurial aspirations. He's, to this day, is still entrepreneurially minded. My dad had several business ventures that just didn't go well, but my dad allowed me to be a part of it and to see both the good, the bad, and the ugly. My dad was a mortician. So, one of the businesses that I had was a janitorial business. So I used to clean barbershops. I cleaned outside every morning before I went to school. When my dad was working at a funeral home, I would clean up, all kinds of stuff. There would be needles, used needles, all kinds of things, condoms. But for me, at a very young age, I love seeing money grow. And for me, I didn't start a business so I can actually buy a fancy car and things like that. I didn't care about materialistic things. And to this day, I still don't. But I just really wanted to see how to actually grow and create wealth and to be able to create generational wealth. And so we'll talk more about that. Hopefully we talk about the foundation. But my dad instilled all those values in me and my brothers at a very young age. And, that's been my life mission.
So all of us have that defining moment. Tell everyone that experience in that corner store with you and your friend buying that grape drink.
Yeah. So, wow. Okay. So you definitely read the book. Yeah. So believe it or not, most people probably will laugh when they hear this, but the person that you see today was not always the same person. Like I used to get in a lot of trouble when I was younger, and that was just a product of my environment. During the time where gangs were popular and big, this was in I guess the 80s, mid 80s, late 90s. I was involved in gang activities, not because I wanted to gang bang, but I needed protection. Me and my brother had to walk to school every day, and so we would cross over turfs and things like that. But one instance happened when I was at a corner store with a good friend of mine, and my friend got murdered right in front of me. And that was horrific. And it's interesting because, that code, the street code of you don't snitch. I knew the person who actually murdered my friend, but I didn't say anything because I was scared. I knew that guy knew where I lived. I know he knew my parents. And I just knew at that moment, that was a redefining moment for me because the way I was going, I had a third grade teacher to tell me, and I always have to say her name, and it's all due respect because she's still alive. But she actually don't know how she really motivated me because I still have a chip on my shoulder for that. And I love her dearly, Miss Verbal, third grade, Sobey Elementary. She told me that I was either going to be dead or in jail before I graduated from elementary, the way that I was going. I had a big heart. I still do. But I wasn't afraid of anything. I've had people pull knives on me, and I still was trying to fight them with a knife, with them having a knife in the hand. But that was just a product of my environment. When we grew up, you had to have grit. You had to actually, and I was a smaller person, really small. And so for me, I had to learn how to defend myself. And so that was a redefining moment for me. And, after seeing that experience, it scared me half to death. And I literally went inside for a minute. And I say went inside, I mean inside of myself. And so I just focused at that point. I was just like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I was fortunate to get beat out the game. But then I actually started,
Whoa. You got beat out the game.
Yeah.
Tell us that story. How do you get beat out the game?
Well, yeah. So without too much detail, it was a I guess you would call it a ritual thing. I mean, because the thing is, once you are a Crip or Blood or whatever it is, you are always a Crip or Blood unless you get beat out, and some people get beat out to death at that time. You have to show blood.
Like a resignation email?
Yeah, not quite, not quite. Um, but one thing that I loved about for me, part of the reason with the gang is that I was the kid at a very young age that used to watch gang movies and like mob movies. I loved the organization of how structured their business was, and there was repercussions for when you actually did things and were out of line. And those were a lot of business concepts that I learned, and for me, I picked up on business easy as a very young age. We called it hustling. So I have friends that did illegal hustling. I did like all legit hustling because I had a father that's like 6'4", 200 and maybe 50 pounds at that time. Yeah. His hands was probably twice the size of my hand. And I was scared to death of my father. And so, for me, it was one of those things where, gang was being in the gang. That's my father. I love that picture. And so that picture actually was, I think, at one of the funeral homes that he was working at. But yeah, my dad he has no idea how much he taught me with his actions and his words. One of the best work ethics that I've ever, to this day. My dad is retired. He's been retired for a while. My dad still wakes up at 5 a.m. without an alarm clock, and he works at the church. And my dad works harder than anybody I know. My dad is over 70 years old and still pushing. And so for me, I'm like, I want to at least be 50% of what my hero is.
Well, before we go on to the honorable part of your life, Jonathan, can we just go back to the part where you love fighting? What's that about?
Oh, yeah.
What do you love about fighting? You go to boxing matches today?
So let me tell you. So I used to fight a lot, actually. Part of it was I had a temper. I had a very, very bad temper. And I love the energy of fighting. Like for me, I would just fight for no reason. So to me, being in the gang, that was perfect because we can jump people, you can, fight. I love fighting. And I was pretty good at fighting, actually. I just had no discipline. And so my dad actually enrolled me. And part of it was, I guess you would call it like a Napoleon complex because I was always smaller than most people. And so I had brothers that were way bigger than me. And I would always fight with my brothers. I would fight with people in the neighborhood because the reality is I had to earn my respect. And so I was never scared of anybody. I don't care if you were twice my size. I would fight you. And so my dad, it got to the point where I was, I almost got in a few fights with teachers. And I just had a really bad temper. And so my dad enrolled me into karate, which was the best thing ever happened because it taught me self-discipline. And so now I don't fight with my fist. I fight with my mind and my mouth as an advocate. And that's something I'm extremely passionate about. And I'm willing to die for the things that I'm really passionate about.
Man, we have so much for Jonathan to share. Just want to walk you through a little bit. Your determination to connect with leaders, not only in the state of Michigan, but all across the country. Talk about how you stalked Tavis Smiley.
So, wow.
Call his office 50 times a day. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for younger people, probably they don't know who Tavis Smiley is, but Tavis Smiley was the premier voice for African Americans when I was coming up, particularly like middle school, high school, and even in college. And, I had my own television show in high school, and I literally would watch Tavis Smiley. He was on BET late at night. I think it was like 11 o'clock at night. I would stay up when I wasn't supposed to. I would stay up and watch it. And I would literally take content, and I would even take things from him. And I would like do that for my show. Even his stutter, like Tavis has this thing where he talks, he's like, and I would do that. Although I don't have a stutter, but Tavis does that. And like Tavis is my big brother, love him dearly. But I had an opportunity. He started a Youth to Leaders program in 2000, and I was graduating from high school. So I missed it when it came to Detroit. He had hub cities. So it was like Houston, New York, LA, Detroit, like all of the major metropolitan cities where it was a big population of African Americans. And I missed it. I ended up going to Chicago and I met him there. And I was determined. I was like, I'm going to work for Tavis Smiley. I've never met this guy before. I was like, I'll work for free. I just want to learn. I just want to shadow him. I want to be a sponge. And so I met him. I tried my best to impress him. I had my business cards. I had this, I forgot the name of that tie, but it was a very expensive tie that I asked a mentor of mine to borrow so that I can actually really look super sharp. But it's an expensive tie that my mentor let me use. And so President Barack Obama was there, and he was on the panel. I auditioned to be on the panel, and I literally was the person like, let me answer all the questions. And I was just trying to impress Tavis. And so Tavis noticed me. We took pictures. I got a chance to meet. At the time, President Obama was not the president. He was just a state senator. Cool guy. And so afterwards, I talked to Tavis. I said, look, I have a proposal. My dad always taught me, you always have a business proposition. You always put together a business plan. I put together a business plan to say, hey, I'll be basically your brand ambassador, your ambassador for youth as you go around and try to raise money. I was like, I know how to ask for money. I ain't scared to ask for money. And I'm a businessman. Like, I got multiple businesses. I got multiple streams. I can be So he was like, cool. He probably hear that so much. He sent me off to Andrea Foggy Paxton, who was his executive director for his foundation. And I stalked her. I stalked the office every day. Email, phone call. It got to the point where people got tired of me calling because I was calling for Tavis. I was calling for Andrea. And they got so sick and tired of that one day, Andrea sent me an email, which I put in a book, I believe. And in that email, she was like, okay, we're about to start a State of Black. This was the very first State of the Black Union in Los Angeles at USC's campus. You can come, but you got to work. I say, oh, I don't care about being a part of the program. I just want to work. So he was moving his office to Crenshaw. I literally got off the plane. It was like 90 degrees. I had a suit on. I got off the plane. They took me to the old office. I'm lifting boxes, sweating in my nice suit that I had. And, at that point, I think Tavis saw that I was hungry. And, I told him, I said, look, I'm getting ready to go to college. I'm going to the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. And so he gave me a chance. He said, all right, I'll give you a chance. I was able to do work with him while I was in college. And when I tell you that was a game changing, that was maybe the first time. The second was when I worked for the city with Kwame Kilpatrick. But that was a true game changer for me because I built my Rolodex. I learned most of the things that I learned today at the age of 40. I've been able to do things that 50, 60-year-olds haven't been able to do because of the relationships that Tavis helped me to garner. And I'm forever so grateful for Tavis because he really put me on.
I think it's really important to note you stalked Tavis Smiley, not about your approach was not what can I get, but how can I serve?
Exactly.
Because this is like the foundation, the blueprint of your life.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that to everyone, young people and not so young, on how we should lead with how can I support, how can I create value?
Yeah. And so that's one of the things, again, my dad always taught me. My dad said, you always, too much is given, much is expected. But he always says that you lead with service. That was something that he always did. He's like, it's not about, is that if you want to grow up and be a business owner for just to make money, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You have to understand what your purpose and your intent is and what your passion is. And that's one of the things that my dad taught me at a very young age. And to this day, that's what I tell my daughters. That's what I tell anyone who I mentor, always lead with value. So with all my clients that I have clients in 7 different countries and pretty much 20 states in the United States. I always whenever I onboard my clients, I'm usually providing them with high value without even getting paid in the beginning, because I want them to see that there is a value add. And I do the same thing with people that I consider my mentors. It's a two-way street. Like, it's not about what you get. That's why for me, making dollars while making change is the motto. And I'm hoping that when I wrote the book was to be able to marry that people that are entrepreneurially minded or people that actually are businesses, that is not just about a single bottom line. It's about what are you doing to impact people and the planet. Double and triple bottom line business models is what should be the new model for every business around.
Let's head on down to FAMU. Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. And so you were rooming with you applied for about 100 scholarships, got about $100,000 in free money, and then you got extra $100,000. So tell us about your roommate from Nigeria and how that opened up the world to you.
Yeah, Ade, that's my man. And I hope he's watching this. So Ade, I love him dearly. He was my first roommate. We were in a scholarship house. And Ade just came from Nigeria. And so Ade couldn't even drive. He didn't know how to drive. a car. But he was very smart. I mean, he was a double major, computer science and electrical engineer major. And he went to school to get an education and to graduate. I went to school to get an education, but I partied. And so for him, I remember coming in late most of like freshman year. I was always out. I was like a socialite my freshman year, but I took care of business too. And so Dave, we had this thing where everybody had a turn to cook and clean throughout the week. And so it was beautiful because we had about 17 guys in the house. You had people from Haiti, Trinidad, Bahamas, Louisiana, Chicago, Flint, Florida. I mean, we had people from all over, and we all lived in the same house. So we got a chance to taste all those different cultures. We even had a 4 feet tall guy named Dennis who was from England, and he couldn't cook worth nothing. He couldn't cook. I can't cuss on here, but he couldn't cook. But I got a chance to learn. He used to always call me a bloody bloke, just and I'm like, what is that? So like for me, I wasn't fortunate to travel the world until I went to college. My parents couldn't afford to send me, but I got a chance to see the world amongst my everyday waking up. From the way we handle our hygienes, from the way we cook our food, the way we, just culture, what I call cultural economics. And so Ade opened my eyes, and my first international trip was a study abroad into South Africa. And that opened my eyes. And to me, at that point, I was like, you know what? I want to grow up and just travel for work. So I got to create opportunities where all I do is travel internationally. And I'm a manifestor generator. So like what I speak, and I didn't realize this until a few years back, what I speak come into reality. So so Darius Jones, our mutual friend, told me when I first met him, he said, Jonathan, you got a lot of power, and you got to make sure you use it for good and not for bad. And a lot of times I used it for bad, not knowing. But for me, I'm very intentional about the words and even and what I do and how I show up energetically to people and in the world.
Okay, so we're going to get to Quartz water source and the cannabis business. But first, talk to us on how you started to investing in land and became the vendor representative for FAMU, creating vendor deals on campus while everybody else is at the student government eating.
Yeah. Now I'll say that our student government was actually it was a big deal. I mean, people got when you're in student government at I don't know about all HBCUs, but at FAMU you get paid. You got a stipend every month, and it was like the popular kids. Like we're not like traditional universities where it's like if you play sports you're popular. Like at FAMU and probably most historically black colleges, you're popular when you're like smart, when you're about your business, and you're a leader. Like that's what we pride ourselves in. Like real world stuff. And so, I'm sorry, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
So you started to invest in land.
Uh-huh.
And how did you created some deals with, I think it was Coca-Cola, being the vendor representative on FAMU's campus. And you were able to generate revenue as a result of that.
Yep. It's this thing I used to always say, just leveraging relationships. I was a Coca-Cola scholar, which was one of the scholarships I received. And as a Coca-Cola scholar, you had opportunities to get internships for Coca-Cola that was in their headquarters in Atlanta. So I got a chance to intern for them. And one of the things my dad always taught me was that, whenever you work somewhere, always have an exit strategy, one, and then two, come in and understand who controls the purse, who controls the money. And that's who you want to align with, because where the money is and decisions are made based upon the money person. And so I had a mentor in Coca-Cola, Ingrid Saunders Jones, who I love dearly. She retired from Coca-Cola, but she was one of the highest ranking African Americans. She was in charge of their philanthropic giving. She's from Detroit. And so Ingrid actually showed me around and introduced me to all of the key people I needed to meet. And I literally, like, while most people were hanging out and partying in Atlanta, like the college interns, I was actually going to networking events with CIOs and CEOs and the person who was over brand management and was just getting and building relationships. So I got a chance to build that relationship. At the time, Coca-Cola was going through a lot of issues around affirmative action. And so for me as a business person, and let me define how I qualify an entrepreneur or a business person. Essentially, those people are those individuals that solve problems. And so I am a professional problem solver. So I said, okay, Coca-Cola is having some issues with affirmative action and just kind of racial issues. I know Tavis Smiley at that time was the quintessential, like he was the voice, a very, very respected voice in the African-American community. I realized that part of my job with Tavis, I had to help him raise money for his foundation. So Coca-Cola, Tavis Smiley, how about we marry you all together? Tavis can actually is a good branding partner. And then you guys can write him an annual check to his foundation, which I was in charge of raising capital for. And so Coca-Cola became a national sponsor financially. And that's kind of how that and Coca-Cola, I realized that I was always the middleman, but I wasn't getting paid. And so I said, I got to figure out how to actually monetize this. And so that's kind of how that worked.
And that was and so now you went on to work you went into corporate America, but you also worked in government with former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick.
Yep.
And you write in your book that you learned that you didn't want to work in government. That's what.
Yeah.
Talk about what are the limitations? What did you find the limitations are as relates to government? And would you ever consider serving as an elected official?
I have no desire, and I know that's a political answer. I had the opportunity.
You're getting ready to announce.
Right. I honestly before. So what happened was when I was working with Tavis, Kwame Kilpatrick, late mayor of not late, but the former mayor of Detroit. I interned for him when I was in high school, when he was a state legislator. So he remembered who I was. I actually interned for him also when I was in college one summer. And so he called me and said, hey, man, I'm getting ready. I got reelected my second term. It was a really tight race at that time. And he wanted to change up he wanted to change his staff up. And so he wanted me to come on board. I was living in DC and /LA. I was traveling, jet setting. I was enjoying the life, making what I thought was good money at the time. And at that time, I knew I wanted to be the mayor of Flint. When I was in college, the reason why I interned for Kwame Kilpatrick is because I wanted to learn how, what a mayor does and how to actually do that for my city of Flint. So I had opportunity to come back home. I wasn't really excited because I don't like the winters in Michigan. The only thing that was really making me happy was the opportunity to really learn how to actually run municipal government or to see it and to be exposed to it. And to be close to my parents, because before then I left and never came back. I went to school and I was just enjoying life. I was hanging out, Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, in friends' houses all over, United States. And so I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to do that. I learned so much. And what I realized is that this is what Kwame always used to say, that there's two people that are true public servants. That's elected officials and teachers. Those are the highest callings. Because those are the most unappreciated and the most abused. I mean, you can do everything right and still be wrong. You can never make everybody happy. And then your whole life is all about so forget about having a family. And so for me, I realized that I wanted to have a family. And if I ever considered running for office, that would be when my kids are literally out of college, set up, hopefully married, have their own family. But I don't. Even then, I'm like, and so, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Now I can hear you and see you.
Hello?
Yep. You're good. You're good. Jonathan, you're good. I see
Hello?
you. Yes.
Uh-oh.
I see you. I see you. Jonathan. Jonathan, stand by. I see you. See. Jonathan will be right back. There he is.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. You got a shout out from your fellow FAMU battler.
Queen. Yeah, that's Queen.
So continue. So we're not doing government. I think we got that clear.
Nah. No desire, no interest in government. But what I realize is that you can really make some real change. And the people that really make change are people that you don't see. And I was that person. I was behind, like, one of the things the mayor taught me when I first came, because I was used to being in front, being like, just being seen and in front. And so Kwame, he humbled me very much so when I first started. He was like, look, you're here to serve me and you're here to serve the city of Detroit. And so, that was to me very humbling, especially in my early or mid 20s at the particular time. And so, so that it was a great experience. I love working with government, and actually that's what I do now. I work, I help candidates raise money. I help with strategy as an advisor. I love doing that, particular candidates that actually are truly for the people, not for themselves. So I'm super selective of who I actually align myself with. And a lot of times I'm not involved in politics if I don't believe in the candidate and their policies and interests and values.
So talk to us about, so you're the CEO of Quartz Water Source, fascinating company. Talk to us about what was the need for Quartz Water Source, social impact, creating value, and profitable. Why? What was going on in Flint when it was covering all the headlines? What's going now, and how is Quartz Water Source a solution?
Yeah. So the Flint water crisis, which I'm sure most people are aware of, being from Flint, that was something that I took very personal, because I have friends and family that was affected by that, right? And won't ever be the same. I mean, once you get lead in your body, in your system, you can't get out. You can't get rid of it.
What does that mean? How does that affect you? Go ahead.
So it affects everything. It affects your mental, your developmental. So like for kids, there's going to be developmental challenges. And so again, like you can't just like some way suck out the lead in your system. It's always going to be there. There's people that had have skin disorders, and won't ever be the same. And we still don't even know. I mean, we don't know what 10 years from now, what that lead poison is going to do for folks that were exposed to it. And so,
1 second, Johnson. Before it hit the headlines, the Flint water crisis, and by the way, it's not just Flint, it's other cities.
Yep.
Why did that hit the tipping point at that time when there was issues with the pipes for years?
Yeah. So for older infrastructure cities like Flint, like Detroit, like Chicago, like New York, this is something. I mean, we still have places in Detroit that has wooden underground water pipes, wood, because it costs so much to replace it. And so what happened was Flint was at the time, they were a city under a city management's leadership. And so they thought it was cheaper to change the water system and to save a couple of dollars. And what happened was they didn't do the proper coating of the pipes, and so it started leaching. So the lead started leaching out because of the chemicals that they used to kind of clean the water and purify the water. It started leaching and extracting the lead from the pipes, and that was going into people's water. So people were washing up in it, drinking it. It was really bad. It was really bad.
Well, when people were using the water, they didn't have any other choice. And no. if you couldn't on a long time basis, many people can't afford buying bottled water, and who knows where that comes from. Did they know that they were, using or internalizing, lead water? Do you think they knew that?
Well, I knew people in Flint knew. I mean, people knew. I would probably say almost a year before it actually came out as a national, like a national crisis. I remember my mother used to bring me this alkaline water from a granary, and it was always cloudy. And I was just like, Mom, this water has a weird taste to it. Now, this is alkaline water that went through a whole nother system. But the water, it was a glass bottle, but it was cloudy. And so, people would post things on social media. It was passed on to the governor's people, and somehow they didn't know, or they didn't act fast enough. But yeah, it was this. It wasn't like it happened and then they fixed it. It was happening, and people were just like, "What's going on?" Like, I turn on my water and it's brown. It's literally brown, like a dark brown color. And so, people didn't know what they were drinking. They just knew it was something wrong with the water. And you had babies that were, they had to use water for their baby formula. It was really bad. And that was, again, when I found out about that, it wasn't enough. I know a lot of people were sending money in. A lot of people were sending bottled water. Those are temporary fixes. They needed that because the reality is, Sabrina, people were washing up in bottled water. They would get cases of water and fill it up, like try to fill their tubs up to wash their babies, and they always share the water. This was like something that you see in a third world country. And this is supposed to be the United States of America. And so I was pissed off. I'll be honest with you. I was pissed off. And for me, I didn't want to just put a Band-Aid on it. I wanted to figure out how we create a solution that is sustainable and something that actually will make sure that this doesn't happen in Flint, happen in other places. And so as we see that this is happening outside of Flint to this day, and it's going to be it's going to keep happening because of the old infrastructure, because we're not investing the kind of money, because water is very expensive, right? And it's very, very, very expensive. And so for us, we wanted to make sure that when we started Quartz Water Source, that we did it responsibly, we did it with a long-term play, and that we did it in partnership with the people and the community, not just as a business. And it goes aligned with this whole idea of we can make money, but we got to make change with it too. And we got to do it with integrity.
Please share your questions or comments in the chat for Jonathan. So that was a tipping point. Was the Flint crisis, was that the tipping point that said, I have to create this company? And how did you do it? How do people access it today?
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't want to start the water company. What happened was I got a chance to go to Israel. And for those that don't know, Israel is truly the water technology hub for a lot of innovation, but very much specifically around water, because Israel is a lot of Israel is in the desert. And so they had to figure out ways to continue to plant, agriculture to drink in the desert, in a very dry land. And so I saw some of the technologies. I met a company that I thought would have been a good fit for a solution. And I started off as a consultant, just kind of connecting them. And it was just for me, just getting it to our community so that it can be a solution. And then as we started kind of doing listening tours, and everybody was like, we want to have our own water company. And we had all these ideas that we were getting, because again, we're not prescriptive. We come, the way Quartz work is we come in, we talk to the community, we work with the community, and we see what they want. And I say the community, I'm not talking about political leaders. I'm talking about everybody from community, neighborhood block clubs, to teachers, to business people, to, and even elected officials. But everybody wanted to have their own bottling company. And we wanted to redefine what people talked about Flint. And we wanted Flint, to this day, we want Flint to be the water capital of the world. We want to take a bad situation and turn it into something that's good and change the narrative about what they're talking about our city, because ain't nobody can talk about Flint but us. And if you're not from Flint, we're not going to let you talk about our city. And so that's what we went out to do. I ended up, after all of those conversations, I originally was going to fund, as an investor, I was going to fund an entrepreneur to actually take on the business and to start a water company. But I couldn't find anyone. So I said, I'll start it and then I'll hand it off to someone, because I had no interest in doing water. Like, that doesn't make me tick. But then as I started doing research with my team, we realized that this is a bigger issue than Flint. And so for me, it became a thing where it's now a life mission for me. So whatever I'm doing, it's going to be something around water. And if I'm not a part of the solution here in the United States, in the islands and in other countries that are suffering from the lack of access of water or clean water, I want to be a part of that in every way, as an advocate, as a service provider, whatever I can do. And to me, it's not even about money. It's about really, truly like making an impact. And I want to be remembered as I used to be a water boy, actually, back in the day. So when I was in middle school, I was a water boy for a high school that I went to, Flint Northern. So yeah, I want to be known as the water boy.
While making dollars while making change. How do you partner with cities and states? How does one access Quartz Water Source? We've had the community meeting. Now what? Yeah,
so we partner with technology, people that actually own the technology. We don't own the technology. Okay. We partner with unique, innovative technologies. One could be atmospheric water generation. Others can be a very sophisticated filtration system. There's all kinds of water technology that people are creating here in the United States and throughout the world. And so we serve as almost like a marketplace hub where we're helping getting into the communities. But what makes us unique and what we have is we have a proprietary system where it's almost like a water insurance policy. And so that's what differentiates us from others, because again, we don't own the technology. And so we get the technology to the communities that need it. But what we found during the pandemic is that there's a lot of communities that need this technology, but they can't afford it, right? Places like Flint can't afford to drop six figures for a water system that they don't need at that particular time. So what we did was we set up a model where you can actually pay up annual premium, similar to what you would do with insurance. And when you, not if, but when you actually have water issues, whether it's through natural disaster, which we see that's happening through global warming, you're able to tap into your insurance policy, even though the machines are not paid for. You're able to tap into your insurance policy, and within 24 to 48 hours, you have access to thousands and thousands of gallons of water that can be created by just air and solar. So,
so what cities are you concerned about when it comes to water?
Cities with older infrastructure, one, and then also cities that
name names. Which city?
Oh, so Philadelphia, New York, places in most of the older cities. So Midwest, the East Coast, a lot of the older cities that had booming older infrastructure, right? So a lot of places down south, more newer infrastructure, like the Atlantas and Dallas. Those are new infrastructure, but places with older city infrastructure, places in South Carolina, Alabama, things like that. Those are the places that really, and places that has a high probability of getting hit with hurricanes and all kinds of natural disasters, like, throughout Florida, throughout Texas, Mississippi, things like that. In New Orleans, I mean, not New Orleans, but Louisiana.
So you meditate in the morning and then you have at least 6 glasses of water before you begin your day. Where do you access your water source?
So I have a Berkey. It's a water purifier in my house. So I utilize that, and primarily, so that's where I get most of my water source from. But I drink a ton of water. I drink about 1.5 gallons water per day. And so, I love water. It's particular, and I'm a water, like, what do you call it? A water snob. So I'm very particular. I can taste water and like, I can tell if it's good or not. Like, some people can do that with wine and all that. Water, a good, clean, crisp water with a good profile. I can tell you what that is.
So when you're traveling, you have your filter with you?
I don't. So when I travel, I love Fiji water.
Okay.
I love Fiji. Fiji is like my number one. If I can't get Fiji, then I'll probably do some kind of alkaline water. But yeah.
Interesting. So you've also invested in cannabis.
Yes.
I'm hearing from friends in this sector or very interested in this sector, having the inability to access those corridors, access the capital. Why did you decide to turn your attention on cannabis?
Yeah. So I'll say this. I was never really a consumer or a big enthusiast of cannabis before Michigan became legal, and I started seeing trends of a lot of mom and pop. Well, first of all, the cannabis industry, us Black folks, we created the culture and made it popular and made it what it is to this day. And we continue to do that with everything else that we do. But I saw a lot of these mom and pop and a lot of people that's gone to jail and that was out, but they couldn't get the felony off of their record. And now this became legalized. And then you have these people that's coming from all over, from Canada, California, Colorado, coming into Michigan, buying up these places, buying up buildings, pushing, Detroiters and other Black and brown people out of a business that they've been doing, whether it was legal or illegal. But now it's legal. And so I said, I want to do something about it. So I started talking to a few of the bigger cannabis companies, and we have this thing called social equity, which anybody that's in cannabis familiar with. And to me, social equity is just like a buzzword, because most cannabis companies don't really adhere to that. They write a check to a nonprofit and they're like, okay, that's our community service. But to me, like I said, I wanted to make sure I held someone accountable and that we were at the table and not on the menu. And so one of the companies, Pleasantries, which is a company that was responsible and with integrity. I pitched them on an idea. I said, look, I want to be a part of it, but I also want to be an investor. And I want to be able to have strategic investors. And particularly, the strategic investors are going to be people that look like me, so that we are able to be at the table and be able to influence and create positive change for our community. And so, so we started doing that. And that's how I got involved in cannabis. And so I've been working with several different cannabis companies after that. as more on the consulting side. But yeah, it's a good business. I think it's starting to get oversaturated here in Michigan, but not in other places that it's going to be legal or recreational soon. And so I'm looking into other different things now, like psychedelics, mushrooms, the farming of that. I have a good brother that actually is helping me to better understand and learn more about that. And it's going to be something that's become that it's a lot of medicinal properties, and that's what I love about it. And that was what I loved about cannabis, is that I didn't realize that it really has a lot of good things to help people from a health standpoint. And so I was like, oh wow. And so there's some things in mushrooms that truly is going to be, I think a lot of pharmaceutical companies are going to is going to get big on mushrooms, because it's proven that it's helping a lot of diseases like Parkinson's disease and diabetes and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's something I'm exploring right now, and at some point I'm going to probably invest in it before it gets too popular.
We're going to be wrapping up shortly, but you said that you were a water connoisseur. Are you a cannabis connoisseur?
I wouldn't say that. No, I mean, I know my product. I know the companies I invest in. I know those products. Again, I don't do it. I consume, but more so just to understand the product. But I don't really love. To me, I have a different kind of high. Like I said, I meditate. I do a lot of other things that gives me a very natural spiritual high. Being around beautiful people gives me a natural high. Traveling is a high for me. So yeah, I don't consume on a regular. That's not really my thing, but just more so for R&D, I guess.
I have 3 wrap-up questions, unless our audience has questions for you. What did your 3 beautiful daughters teach you about making dollars while making change? What 3 action steps would you like to give to all of our listeners, viewers?
Wow. So that's loaded. So, whenever I hear my daughters now, I'm surprised they haven't come up to my room yet. Because they always interrupt all of my my podcasts and all of my interviews. But I love my daughters, and my daughters are truly they're my why. What I do and everything that I do and the sacrifices that I make is because of them. I mean, I wrote the book because of them. I want them to know that even if it's something that you think you can do, put your mind to it and do it. Because I always said that I couldn't write a book. I just never thought I was good. I was like, who would want to read my book? But my daughters, I did it for my daughters. A lot of stuff that I do is for my daughters to see, not necessarily just hear, because I tell them a lot of what they should be doing, but I try to live my life in a way that they will be honored to say that I'm honored to be their father. But there's 3 things that I live by, that I'm living by, and that I'm teaching my daughters, and that's one is focus. That's a big thing for me, focus, because again, as a serial entrepreneur, as a father of 3, beautiful daughters, and I'm a very active father. I'm not a custodial like Kanye said. My daughters are my number one priority. And so everything in my life has to be surrounded around that. So every business venture, everything that I do has to complement the lifestyle that I have and is creating for my family. So focus is important. So a lot of things I have to say no to. Every day I have to ask myself, why am I doing this? And is this aligned with what I set out to do? Number 2 is discipline. Discipline, the way your habits, the things, and I kind of identify some of those in the book. I have a ritual that I do every day. There's only 2 times in a day that I tell people that you can actually control, is the beginning and how your day starts and how it ends. Everything in the middle, life happens. And so we call them life situations, a friend told me. And then the last thing is your circle. My dad always used to tell me, control your circle. And I've learned that, particularly in the last 2 years, how important your circle is. And I've purged a lot of people in my circle because, sometimes you just grow out of touch and things like that. And it's all good. It's all love. But the reality is, you are the average of the people that you surround yourself with. But then also in the rough times, in the good and bad times, you really see who your real people are. And for me, I only want good energy people. I want people that I aspire to be, or that inspires me, and vice versa. And I want people that's smarter than me. I don't want to be the smartest person in my group. And so I control my circle. I don't let a lot of people in my circle. In the past, I did, because I thought I was a people's person. But after people use you and get everything they need from you, like they said, they get all they can, and then they can. So yeah, so it's been beautiful to be able to be in a place where I'm only around people that love me and I love them, and people that, like I said, I look to and I'm like, wow, like you really are unique and you really are interesting. And it's something I can learn from you. Most people I feel like I can't learn from, not most, but there's some people that used to be in my life that we just had a good time, but I never learned anything. I didn't grow. They never held me accountable for anything. And to me, I'm turning 40, and my 40 is about to be a whole nother level. I'm about to manifest some amazing things, and it's not about me, but the stuff that I'm going to be doing through me, through what God has provided me with, and the gifts, is about to be revolutionary. So if you don't hear me and see me on social media, it's because I'm in the lab cooking up some stuff, and every day I'm working on something to make sure that when it's time for me to leave, that my legacy live way beyond my physical years here. So
Jonathan, how did you feel mentoring World of Money moguls who were, learning from you throughout America, from the United Kingdom and Senegal? What was that experience like for you? I heard from them, but what was your experience?
it was an honor. I really, so everything that I do, so there's like certain buckets, right? So I say no to a lot of things now. I didn't used to do that before. I say no. What I don't say no to is young people. If I have an opportunity to talk, work, mentor, or to just listen and to serve young people, that's what, to me, that gives me life. That keeps me young. And the caliber of students that you all had in your program, wow. I mean, I was like, man, I feel like I need to be taking notes from y'all. I mean, it's very, very talented people. Well, I remember there was one gentleman who, I told him, he was like, I challenged him to sell me. No, I think he was challenging me to sell him a belt, because I told him, I said, I can sell a used toothpick. And I've always have. And so he challenged me on the spot, and we just had a really good time. And I want to hopefully keep in touch with him. But there's some really good students, and I hope that I can be involved and stay involved. And with our foundation, which I want to say before
Oh,
we
yes,
leave,
please.
my dad wanted to start this foundation, the Quarrels Family Foundation. We launched it on his birthday last year, December 29th, with our re-release of the new content of Making Dollars While Making Change. But the Quarrels Foundation is going to be to serve and to give to young people all over the world. We're going to be the Gates Foundation at some point, but right now we're starting off small, and we want to make sure that it's real work that we're doing, not just giving them scholarships. That's not, we're giving them wraparound services. We're connecting them to mentors. We're helping them with technical assistance, and then we're going to actually help them with long-term planning. So that's when we're going to probably talk to you, Sabrina, because half of the scholarship that we give them is going to go to long-term retirement savings. So whether that's through crypto, whether that's through stocks and mutual funds, but we want to teach them as entrepreneurs. It's one thing to have a business, and we'll give you a stipend for that, but we also want you to actually know to start planning ahead. For me, I was planning for my kids' college graduation when I was in college, freshman year. While people were buying new cars, I was actually, with the money that I was making on real estate and everything else, I was putting it in 529 plans. And so my kids will be able to go to college if they want to. I'm not opposed to them not going, because I want my kids to be business people. So I want them to start their own business. I have an entrepreneur fund for my kids so that they can start business, lose money, and to see how it is to lose money, and to figure out how do you learn those lessons, because the best lessons to learn are when you make failures.
Wow. Okay. How can everyone reach you? Give us the information.
Yeah. So you can reach me, my website, Jonathan, JONATHAN, Quarrels, QUARLES.com. So JonathanQuarrels.com. And on there, all of my social handles are there. Jonathan.Quarrels is Instagram. Yeah, all of my social handles are on my personal website, with all the other stuff that I'm doing and working on. So JonathanQuarrels.com.
We've been joined by World of Money virtual teacher, the CEO of Quartz Water Source, and the best-selling author of Making Dollars While Making Change, Jonathan J.Q. Quarrels. Thank you for creating tremendous value in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.